they're having a hair debate in but I was going to say, Dave just called out, I was going to say you win by default because I don't think it matters how nice your hair is if you're missing a tooth. That's from my personal research.
I got some fake teeth here too, and I think it might be the same one that you have. Dude, tell me the story. How did you lose that tooth?
Well, so it's super exciting. I got in a major bar fight. No, when I was like, how old was I? Like 8. I fell down a slide and messed up my front teeth. And then like a year ago, it just kind of gave up, so it needed to come out. And then like soon as I had the surgery done, my dentist basically was shut down because of COVID.
No.
So this was supposed to be fixed like 9 months ago, and they just got approved to do. They called mine like non-essential surgery, and I'm like, dude, this is pretty essential for me, you know.
Especially for the amount of camera time that you get every day. Like, dude, you will do a 6-hour-long live writing copy in public.
Yeah, I'm just like, you guys can. I have a thing. I have like, but it gives me like a really bad lisp, and I already have kind of a lisp with this situation. So it is what it is. But webinars should be fun. You know. That's what we're chatting on today, right? Something like that?
I think so. I think you're going to teach them how to make a lot more, create more engagement and make more sales with VSLs and webinars.
Sweet. Okay.
Or you can just teach them about teeth.
Hair product.
And hair product.
All right. So first thing we got to do, we got to ask the chat. How many of you, hey, there's Kristen. What's up, Kristen? Kristen's written some copy for me. She's pretty good. Dave is here. I see some familiar. A is here. A is my favorite letter. Look at that.
Same, dog.
Yeah, it's a good letter. It is a good. How many folks in here have like put together a webinar for your offer, for your product or service? Like run one or tried to. It's okay if there's a lot of no's, because honestly, I don't even have a webinar for my stuff right now. I've just written mostly webinars for other people. Mike says he tried.
You've written the webinars for Sam Ovens, for Ty Lopez, and I don't know who else is in your Rolodex here, but
yeah, I could do the whole authority building thing. That's probably a good idea. Who am I? Oh, yeah, that's a good place to start. So I'm Sean Vosler. Nice to meet you all. I write copy for the stars. So webinars, yeah, like I've written quite a few for folks. Sam actually wrote most of his own webinar. I just gave him the outline, and Sam is a freaking beast at marketing. Everyone's like, oh, you did all this stuff for Sam. I'm like, well, I helped, but he's already a genius. So, you know, that's very useful.
And his hair is longer than ever.
Dude, I haven't seen it in person yet, but I'm super excited about the prospect. Not done it myself, I've outsourced. So guys, today, what I'm going to show you, we'll be jumping into Jarvis to look at, exactly how to create some of the sub segments of the webinar. But what we really need to understand is like what a webinar is, and in the ecosystem of our marketing world, what it is, and like the basic frame of it. Because if you don't get that right, like it doesn't matter how good the AI is, like it's not going to work, right? So the structure is super important, the principles behind it. So I think the first chunk of this training will start there. It may seem a little boring, but it's like learning to ride a bike. You got to start with the tricycle. I'll come up with a good analogy. Don't worry about it. But we'll start there. And I'll be giving you guys this whole outline. I'm gonna briefly go over this thing. Let me share my screen real quick. If that works for you, Austin, we'll start there.
It absolutely works for me. You also have a book called 7-Figure Copywriting, right?
I do.
You have it with you?
Check. You want to see so I just got some physical print tests back, and I'm pretty excited. We got the.
That is a thick book.
The chunker.
Look at that.
Yeah, we're getting there. I couldn't decide on a cover, so I went with 2 covers. So you can, like, you know, if you want to be weird and edgy, you can use this cover, put it on the coffee table, or you can go traditional. What's that?
Do you do the art for your book too?
Yeah, so I do all the design stuff. Like that's what I went to school for, actually.
Okay.
Back in the day, but you don't make any money doing design unless you're like, you know, top 1% of 1% designers, and I'm not that good. So I
it's
decided
a different book. It's way better than my book that I have here. I wrote this.
Hey,
I would say 40% of this is written
nice.
with Jarvis here.
I wish Jarvis was around when I started this thing. It's funny because there are segments of the book. So we can tangent for just a second, because writing a chapter of a book is very similar to writing a webinar, and honestly, but coming up with the basic like premise, the big idea, the crazy angle that you want to go after, Jarvis can give you a lot of direction in that, but you still need to like know a bit about the stuff, right? I don't think we're really in trouble when Jarvis can come up with like unique ideas that we don't even, all we have to tell it is like a genre of product, and it just writes everything from scratch. Fortunately, we still have to do a little bit of stuff, right? But eventually. What's your book called?
For now, actually, Jarvis is our AI assistant, and he's not going to do it for you, but he will do it with you. And I kind of think about it as, you know, he's like the best assistant on the court. You know, you'll dribble it a little bit, throw him the ball, keep going down, and then you'll have to pick it back up, and you just keep moving down, down, down until you finally get the slam dunk. But he's not going to just like go all the way and score the point.
Well, plus, like, as someone who writes a fair bit of copy, the most efficient way that I write copy is when I give someone some basic points to write about, like an assistant or another copywriter. They write something, and then I go back in and edit it. That is my favorite way to do it. I'll be honest. Yeah. Like, if I have a choice, because writing it from scratch is very painful and time consuming. So Jarvis is now turned into my like assistant to start with, and I just give him. We need a female name for Jarvis too, Jarvette or something. So
I know,
it doesn't just have to be a guy, a sassy assistant.
Maybe there will be a whole AI family here at Conversion AI.
Yeah, a grumpy grandpa, something like that. Yeah, Ricardo, I don't have it on Amazon yet. They take like 30%. I'm not a big fan of their margin. I've sold over 1 million of the book, and I've been able to keep like a good chunk of that because Amazon didn't take it. So let me go ahead. I'm going to share this outline with you guys, and I'll be giving you guys a link to this after the chat here, and then once I'm going to go through this real quick, and then we're going to actually go into the long form editor and play around with some of the tools that Jarvis gives us to create some of the key parts of a webinar. How's that sound, Austin? Nice.
Comment if you're ready for this.
I'm going to say yes. Bring it.
Bring it.
I'm ready too. My body is ready. Sweet.
And tell me that what's the difference in your mind between a VSL and a webinar? Like, are they the same thing? The principles align, or are there like nuances that are different?
So obviously the medium is different. You know, if you're on a VSL, it's more talking to somebody instead of with somebody. So it's a different presentation style. The content, though, in my opinion, should be similar. You know, a VSL are generally shorter. But
and for everybody,
I'll put it this way.
A VSL is a video sales letter. It's kind of like you walk into a room and it starts playing.
It's like an infomercial that you choose to watch. But you know, a lot of the principles are the same. It's kind of like the difference between making a LinkedIn post or a Twitter post. You know, it's like they're both a lot of times trying to get the same thing across, but they're different mediums, right? So you got to consider that. And yeah, but these principles will work with both for sure. Another really important thing people need to consider when they're putting together a webinar is the price point of what you're selling. And most importantly, like the level of understanding of the target audience you're going after, right? So for instance, for Conversion AI, I would have 2 different webinars. I'd probably have multiple, but based on the level of comprehension of your target audience. If you wanted to go after general audience with conversion AI, you would need a much different webinar than the current marketing strategy you guys are doing now, which is working super well because you're mainly targeting people who, quote unquote, already get the idea, right? They're entrepreneurs who've written at least like a blog post, right? So if you were to create a webinar for Jarvis to target the general populace, you would need to teach them a bit of entrepreneurship on the front end as well, right? And perhaps, offer them bonuses on that would help them build a business around it. So those two things are very important to consider. I probably should have put those in here as well. But, in my opinion, I'm going to do my best not to just read this thing word for word. I promise, guys. I'll be honest. This is why I do mostly writing, is because I'm not a presenter, a practice presenter. It's on my bucket list to learn how to speak publicly, but currently it's not my forte. But I love this idea. A mentor of mine drilled this phrase into my head: teach, transform, transact, right? And that's really, to me, what webinars are. At the forefront, the majority of what you're trying to do with a webinar is inform your audience, because an informed buyer is a good buyer. They're a good customer. If they're not informed and they buy just on hype, they're going to refund. They're going to have buyer's remorse. The smarter your buyer is by the time they get to your call to action, the much better experience everyone's going to have. You as a product seller, them as a buyer. So to me, that teach part is super important. And if you do that teaching part right, you're going to transform them, right? You're going to transform through persuasion. You're going to transform their perspective on things. You're going to transform their misconceptions, their misbeliefs. So if you do your job right on the teaching side, you're going to do the transformation automatically. So with Jarvis, with Conversion AI, I think it does an excellent job on the teaching part, Austin. I think it does so well at bringing information together that you, as an end user, once you have an outline like this, I'll be giving you guys down here an actual straight up outline. It's pretty simple. The principles are all here. But Jarvis, to me, that's the area that it will be able to plug into so well when you're creating a webinar, is actually giving you, as a presenter, ammunition to teach from as an assistant, right?
In this outline here in Jarvis, how does Sean Vosler use it?
How does Sean? Yeah, I'll show you. It's pretty similar to the document I posted in the group, but it's just putting it in different order, right? And the teaching part here, it plugs down in the outline here into these three key principles. So we'll walk through putting those together. But real quick, we'll just touch here. Yeah, the end goal of copy. I don't care what your philosophy is on life, marketing, whatever. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to do with copy and marketing? Is you're trying to change someone's behavior. Because before they didn't use Jarvis, and you're trying to convince them that they need to use Jarvis and that it's going to make their lives better and it's going to make their business better. That's your job as a marketer, is to convince them of that, right? Does that make sense? So to do that, it's just informing people and making a logical argument as to why you're right in your claims. All right. So, and then the last part of a webinar is just the transaction part. Okay. It's the offer. And a lot of people just do this pretty nonchalant, and that's okay. But they get down and and I made this product and it'll help you do that. Right. But the frame you really want to go to is giving them a shortcut. And I found that to be really the easiest way to frame an offer, is I just gave you all the information you need to make an informed decision. Now let me offer you a shortcut to get to that end result. we've been talking about, right? So that's really the last part of webinar. The same as VSL, right? You've got the front end teaching, giving them context for everything. You're persuading them that they need to take an action or there'll be negative results, and that there will be positive results if they do change. And then the transactional part is, in exchange of value, if you give me some money, I'll give you a shortcut, right? And then just kind of get down to the nitty gritty a little bit. Ideally, at the end of the transaction, it'll feel like a really good deal in their favor. So I like to go with, I hate the phrase 10x because it's been, it's been so beat up, but you really want to shoot for that like 10x to 100x value transfer in their favor in the webinar part. That's where like Jarvis, like if I were to frame it to somebody, it costs, let's do the math. It costs literally 20 times more to hire a copywriting assistant than it does to give Jarvis a try, right? If you wanted to get somebody $4,000 a month in-house, do copy for you as an assistant, it's not going to replace maybe a head copywriter, and that might just be my bias coming out. But, there's that rudimentary level of value that it brings, which is well in excess of 20x if you just look at it as hiring somebody to do it. Now, if you look at the value of like regularly putting out good content, getting SEO listings, putting out good social media content, that's where you start getting in that like 30, 40, 100x value mark, where it's like, yeah, it could theoretically double your business if you got twice as many leads by doing more, putting out more quality content, right? So those are the kind of frames you want to give at near the end of a webinar to justify your price point. That's why I generally like making whatever it is I'm selling, I try to put it in context, and I generally like to work in the business world because it's very transactional. So like the term business opportunity is kind of gross, but at the end of the day, like a lot of times that's what you're selling is an opportunity to increase their business or to start a business. And that's what Sam Ovens did so freaking well with his stuff, right? He gave a frame of reference to his $2,000 offer that made it very clear that it's worth way more than $2,000, right? A lot of us are used to doing a very solid transaction. This laptop here was like $3,400. Kind of sucks. I still think that's stupid expensive for a laptop, but I actually did the selling on my end. I was like, well, I'm going to be making this with it. I'm going to be doing this in my business with it. Like I logically and emotionally justified the purchase myself internally. Does that make sense? But if you do that in your marketing, it's a no-brainer if they're informed. That's why the teaching part is so important.
Like the value stack at the very end, where you can kind of compile like, here's all the things that you're going to get. And normally it's this amount, and you bring it down to this amount. That's just like more pricing. It's also about showing the value of those things, not just the hard cost.
Yeah, and even if you took all the bonus stuff, like this is worth $20,000. No, like forget all that. Don't even worry about doing that. It's more giving them context to what it will do at the end of the day and attaching a value to it. In the health space, you wouldn't necessarily put a dollar figure on having removing your back pain, right? You wouldn't say, well, you're going to work more, so you're going to make twice as much money. It's more like you're going to have a good time hanging out with your grandkids or kids. You're going to feel better when you wake up. Like those are the more value-driven transactions. And that value ladder is a good word in this context as well, I think, because you could talk about transactional value of something like do this course or this program and build a product and sell it, and you could make 6 figures a year, 7 figures a year, whatever. And here's people like Dave who did it and did here's the case study, right? Or you could. And you could build on that and say, you spent most of your life following the traditional 9 to 5 trajectory most of us have, and you find yourself stuck at a ring in the ladder, and going up that corporate ladder, you might find yourself another position, but you're going to find yourself more stressed. You're going to be fulfilling other people's dream. You've been sold a lie, stuff like that, right? So anyways, that transactional part, that's where you get to be a bit creative. I think Jarvis actually could help with that too. I haven't played around with that yet as far as like the storytelling part, but
well,
I think
one that I
it
found
could
recently
be
I thought is pretty impressive Jarvis can do is write real estate listings, do it super well. So you'll put in something like, the backyard is 1,000 square foot, just the fact of that. And then it'll say something, it'll paint the picture. Jarvis will go like, the backyard is large enough for your kids and dog to play. And so it's painting a picture of like what's possible. And it also kind of paints a picture. Jarvis does this really well at painting who do you become at the end of using your product or service. Like the one recently was a window tinting. This freelance copywriter had a window tinting client, and they made this video commercial about it and used Jarvis to make the script. And what it came up with was, instead of targeting the like 18-year-olds that have a cool sports car and they want to like look great with dark tinted windows, instead it went the direction of parents, protect your kids from UV light in the hot California sun. And really pushing on like you're a protective parent. I thought, Jarvis, you're brilliant at copywriting.
No, it's true though, right? And that's really like the beauty of this tool is it's going to give you unique perspective on different benefits that maybe you didn't anticipate. I don't know how it works. I was telling you this before the call. I wish I understood the technology more. I like to get down to the nitty gritty, right? But at the end of the day, I'm like, well, it just works, right? I guess I couldn't explain how a circular saw works either, but I know it cuts wood, right? So let's look at some examples of this in action, okay? This is a really basic outline here, okay? There are .com Secrets has a whole section on the 3 keys webinar. There's plenty of really detailed outlines out there on how to put together webinar slides and stuff. We're not going to go into like, on slide 7, you need to have your authority statements, stuff like that. There's a lot of that already out there. If you get these like key parts right, you're going to have a webinar that converts. Everything else is just going to help increase, conversion, stuff like that. It's great to have, but if you don't get these basics right, you're going to lose people very quickly. All right. So I'm going to touch on these real quick. Then I'm going to go into Jarvis. We'll start putting together some of the basics here and look at what it can do. But yeah, the very top end of the webinar, regardless of what it is you're selling, you got to make a promise, right? It's a twofold promise in the sense that what are they going to be able to walk away with at the end of this webinar? And then what did I put here? What is the viewer going to be able to accomplish with this information as well? So let's talk about some examples. Someone mentioned I like the
you can call this a webinar. It's really a training because we're not really selling anything on it at the end. It's more just like, how do we support our customers? But you're talking about, you're selling what a webinar and a VSL can do for you. So what's the promise here in this training?
Yeah, exactly. So the promise is, the implied promise is increase in sales, right? At the end of the day. But if you wanted to get specific, it's like you could, and this is actually, Jarvis is really good at these friggin' headlines with their headline. So you could plug in your basic promise, like learning how to do webinars will increase your sales, right? And then use the, like, let's look at this because we'll use this one as an example. I have to switch to Jarvis. Hang on one second. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and link this thing in the chat here so people can pull this up, because I can't like share my screen. I can just share application windows for some reason, which is totally fine. But let me share this whole basic webinar outline thingy.
Guys, how sweet is Sean's setup here? I mean,
It's
I
pretty,
feel like you
it's
are
ADHD friendly,
you're
man.
living in the
It's great.
future, dude. You're using AI to write copy. You have multiple angles. You're always switching between, dude. Sometimes I'll see you do like music editing as you're writing copy. Like, how many brains are working at the same time inside of you?
That's the problem I'm trying to solve with this book currently, which is called, Thriving with Adult ADHD. No, it's pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie, I have a lot going on. I just enjoy. I need that like constant change, or else I get very easily distracted, which I know is ironic. Okay, so I linked over that basic webinar outline thing in there, guys. So, but we're gonna look at Jarvis, and we're gonna do some playing around here. So let's put together a quick pitch for this webinar itself. Describe, a webinar. Boom. We're gonna keep it that simple. You ready? How to increase your sales with webinars. Okay. Oh, am I not sharing my screen? I guess that would help, wouldn't it? Yeah. Good job, Sean. All right, let's try this. Oh no! Oh, it's Chrome window. That's what I got to do. It's my Chrome is silly. Okay, conversion AI. There we go. Bada boom. Let me know when you guys can see that.
Yep, we see it now.
Thank you guys for being patient with the tech here a little bit. Can see it all right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, so this basic title, that's that promise we're talking about. It's super simple promise. Like we're doing a meta case study. All right. What I mean by that is we're gonna write a webinar about this webinar, or we're gonna write this webinar that we're on right now. All right. So check this out. How to increase your sales with webinar. Generate ideas. So I'm in the long form editor, by the way, guys. It is much meta.
/unlimited, conversion AI /unlimited. So
.com/ no.
Why would you do this one, over, in the starter plan, you have like the headline generator. Like what has this increased for you?
Well, so, and I can't keep switching tabs because it just takes forever, but I use the long form editor for an email I wrote about, again, meta. I was writing an email about conversion AI. I was using the long form editor. And I think it's a great place to start, and then I'll be honest, like I like doing a lot of formatting, and it just helps my mind see the different hierarchy of information. So I generally pull everything into a Google Doc. And I'm sure you guys have that on your, bucket list to add more formatting stuff. But I think this is a great area to keep you focused on generating one thing. So I typed in, this is a great little, I think it's a great tool to start with. Describe the content you want to create. I should probably write this higher quality than a webinar. So maybe you can help me understand this, Austin, because this isn't terribly clear. Describe the content you want to create. Is this the area where you'd talk about, like, would you put a blog post, a webinar, or would you say, I want to make a webinar about helping people learn the different sales and persuasion techniques? Like, what would you say is the best thing to pop in here from your experience?
So what you can do here in this section is include some background information about your company, your brand, your product, about the customer, their goals, like where they are, where you want them to be. And then you can also end it with some instructions in just plain language. It'll understand you. So you can say stuff like, write at a 5th grade level, or you can say, tone of voice is funny. Or tone of voice is Adam Sandler. Like literally it'll know that kind of stuff. It'll write like Adam Sandler would write. And so that's kind of the fun of it.
That's a terrible idea. Adam Sandler.
Terrible idea. You don't want a webinar written by Adam Sandler here. But just knowing that like it understands normal sentences. Like you don't have to put in all these adjectives and stuff. Like you can just give it plain how you would talk to a friend. What do you want to accomplish?
Gotcha. So I'm gonna just put in here, just like off the top of my head, what we want this webinar to do. I want to write in four. So I wouldn't necessarily like tell it exactly that I'm writing a webinar, except that we're writing a webinar about webinars, which I know is going to get confusing for everybody. But I want to really, what did we talk about at the very beginning? We want to write persuasively, and we want to teach people about these different aspects. And this is where actually the tool I really love using is the blog outline tool, which we'll look at here in a second, guys. Just looking at the chat, make sure I don't miss anything here.
Yeah, so there are like multiple. Jarvis officially knows like 11 languages. English is going to be its best language, but there's other ones as well. You know, like Spanish, it knows pretty well, and it works better if you write in Spanish and then you ask it to also respond back in Spanish. We are also working on improving this a ton. So over the next, let's just call it 6 months. Yeah, there will be some pretty big improvements to language.
Okay. So, and another thing I'll just say, like, I don't try to have Jarvis do the structure of my document as much as like I want it to generate good pieces of content that I can structure. Right. I think a lot of people are like, oh, how do you write a blog post with this thing? But they don't even know the basic structure of a good blog post, right? That's why today, like I started with, here's the structure of a good webinar, because you can use the different pieces that you can go into every little tool of Jarvis and it can give you some really cool content to plug into that outline, right? I want to try this long form editor, but that's generally how I would do it, right? So I want to write an informative and persuasive piece of training of content about the importance of using webinars in your business. That's our objective, right? So let's save that. Let's get a little more specific. So I'm using the word persuasive here a lot because there's something I like to look at in marketing, like the big idea. Like what is the core insight that you're trying to get across in your piece of content, whatever it is, blog post, meme, whatever it is you're trying to do? What's the core unique piece of information? To me, in this one, it's about creating webinars that are persuasive as opposed to anything else, right? Persuasive being the key word. That's the big idea. It may seem obvious, especially if you're in marketing, but if you're not, it may that may be a good insight. All right, so let's generate ideas again. Webinars, a useful tool in your business. True. So all these are good, right? Like they're gonna the importance of webinars in your business. This is I can't read. Oh, there we go. So let's just start with a generic title. Let's not even worry about that because we're going to go into some of the other tools to get some of those hooky titles, right? Write your intro paragraph. Oh, I think I already did that. Or you know what? No, this is where we would put like some claims, right?
Exactly. So this is like where you begin the webinar. You maybe introduce yourself. If this is like an email, you would say, you know, hey, Austin here. It's sunny in Austin, Texas, but I want to tell you something about our new product. And then, you know, you tell a bit about the product. So you get the ball rolling. Like you have to start dribbling down the court. And then what will happen is it'll read your intro paragraph, your title, and your instructions at the very top. Combine all of those. And then you can start generating content on the next step.
You're going to hate me, but I'm going to ignore all that advice. I am going
Let's
to.
see what you do, though. Look, this is the fun part. Yeah. I get to see how Sean Vosler uses the tool.
So, and this is kind of fun for a second, guys. When I start writing copy, I write it like it's an instruction manual, like very, very raw, like bits of data, like this is true, this is true, this is true. I just literally get as many facts down as I can. That is the rawest form of any copy I write. because what I'm trying to get out of my head, a lot of people when they get writer's block is they're trying to be really eloquent and persuasive right at the beginning, and that's really freaking hard to do unless you are like Shakespearean. Like I can't sit down and I had to like acknowledge this about myself. I'm not a freaking creative genius, right? The way you get creative, the way you become really creative is get the information out of your head first, the structure, and then build upon that, right? You can't make a really decorated, beautiful house until you have the freaking walls down. So to get those walls down, I literally just bullet point out that outline I gave you guys. That is the framework I would start with to write a very persuasive chapter about webinars, right? Does that make sense? So what I plugged in here, I literally just took the principles that I outlined, I just copied and pasted them in here. So it's super dry, but it gives all the basic claims that I would make about webinars, right? I make like 3 major claims here, right? Webinars are vessels of teaching. You need to learn how to transform people's worldviews, and then you need to make a transaction. Okay, those are the 3 main claims I'm making, and it cut off at a certain point. But that's okay. I don't think we need to have all this in here. So yeah, let's try this. It's going to probably be insane, but that's the fun part. That's actually, I really enjoy that about Jarvis, is sometimes I'll give it some weird stuff, and it'll, like you said, that window tinting example. Yeah, so here we go. This is cool. This is actually really good. So this is like an introduction to our webinar about the power of webinars. We probably should have picked a different topic not to confuse everybody, but whatever. I think most of you will get it. If you're looking to increase sales, then webinars are the way to go. Strong, solid statement. Doesn't give much context, but let's pretend who's our audience here, Austin? I'm thinking very like newbie level entrepreneurs who don't have a webinar yet.
Okay.
Or sexy grandmas who are, I'm just kidding.
All right, let's go ahead. Who's the audience here? Who are we gonna?
I think the audience is our audience here. Only grams.
Possible.
Moms.
Keith goes moms. All right, so how to start a business when you're a stay-at-home mom?
Well, let's go broader, a little broader in the sense that we're not trying to convince them to start a business. More specific. We know they already want to start a business. Let's go with that assumption. So the situation we're marketing to is moms who want to start a business. And I automatically get the idea of like, they don't have much time, so guess what? They need to automate their business. And guess what? A good way to do that is with freaking webinars. So that is our premise. We'll start there. Okay, if you're looking to increase sales, as a busy mom, if you're looking to increase sales, then webinars are a way to go. Webinars are a great tool for marketing and lead generation because they allow people who can't attend your in-person events or seminars to experience them. True. Webinars also provide opportunity to interact between presenters and participants so that attendees feel more connected. Yeah, so like all these are good points, okay? They're not like necessarily the points I would make right off the bat, but I like it. And what I would do, literally, I would copy all of these into a document myself and like pull bits and pieces that I like from them, right? Because what did I write in here? I wrote literally like the most boring, dry copy you could get. Teaching gives them all the context they need to make a decision to change behavior, attitudes, period. Boring, not going to be exciting. Sorry that I gave you guys that line in the beginning here, but it's true. Okay, what Jarvis has done here, I think, very well, is it jazzes it up. Okay, webinars have been a hot topic in the past few years with good reason. They're an extremely efficient way to connect with your target audience and provide them with valuable information about your product or service. The problem is that many people still don't understand how webinars work. Like, this is good copy. I'm still always kind of surprised when it has some freaking good copy. No offense. The problem is that many people still don't understand how webinars work, so they hesitate to use them in their business. This, they say blog post, whatever. This webinar will teach you everything you need to know about webinars, including what they are and why you should be using them. That's a good freaking introduction. We could jazz it up. We could make it more, whatever. But that's it.
It's some text. And let's say there's one sentence that you want to make a little bit spicier.
Ooh.
Creative.
All right. So we're going to say this training. I like this. This is cool. By the way, this is what sells this software more than anything, is just freaking seeing it in action. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that on that. Yeah. Okay. I like that sentence. I actually like all this. I don't want to change much of it.
Well, we can showcase that feature a little bit later.
Well, let's see here. Yeah, I like all of this copy. I think it's solid. All right, so let's go into compose mode. Right? Is that? Oh, wait. What did I just do? What is that? I have not used this yet. I've been using the other long form editor. What is going on here, Austin?
Yeah, this is where you basically it's reading what you've written. It's going to continue carrying it further down the court in real time. Okay,
I'm genuinely kind of weirded out in a good way. I did not quite anticipate this. All right. Okay. So,
and you can also use the power editor in the top right. You see that eyeball?
So that's what I was using. I was using this. I didn't know there's a freaking
views. They're just different views. One and the same.
But this is cool. How did it choose to do this little outline thing here? I guess just being Jarvis.
Not sure. I mean, that's the fun of it. Is it's figuring out what is probably the best way to present. So it looks like it's doing bullet points, right? And the importance of webinar. The next slide, if that was your intro,
this is like an overview, right?
This is the table of contents of the webinar. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then recap what you just told them, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep going here. Let's just see what happens. What do I do next? So I would rephrase this. Okay. So I can actually.
So then you'll start writing. You have to write at least a sentence.
So you build upon it.
You're guiding
and then
it here.
Okay. So I had my basic premise in here, guys, already. And I'm going to paste it again at the top so that we can see. Generally, I would do this as well. My inputs, right? So I like to keep these kind of at the top so I can see what I put in here. And my inputs.
And so you're kind of assembling your document here. And, you can end up using, if you go into the Power Editor, you can use different templates to structure it out. So these are all tools in your tool belt.
So let's talk about this a little bit too in terms of VSL and webinar. When you're generally not reading a scripted webinar, I tend to like to script my webinars, to be honest, but in general, you're kind of doing it off the cuff. But what this is going to give you is a really solid block of content to make slides out of. It's so much easier to make slides off a document than to make slides from scratch and then write a document, in my opinion. Some people may disagree with that, but I love making slides off of a fully written document. So in terms of a VSL or webinar where you might be using slides, this is a great thing to pull from. Will Jarvis recognize my input using comments and coding? Probably. It'll probably mess it all up, but no, I don't know.
It'll read at least the last few sentences to paragraphs. If this document gets super long, it won't remember all of the things up top. But the closer, the better that your most recent past paragraph and a few sentences are, it'll just continue running with that direction. And so that's why we're asking you to, start typing. You have to type a sentence, and then it'll give you a paragraph. So let's
do this.
It'll give you your
it gave us our basic outline here, right? provides valuable information about your product or service to your target audience. Okay. Now, I would change this personally a little bit. So, what is the import? It provides. I'm going to stick with the language I've been using. I would say it teaches your audience. Let's just rewrite this sentence a little bit. It teaches your audience the value of your product or service and helps them understand exactly how they can use it to improve their lives or business. We'll keep it pretty generic for now, right? So this is saying the same thing, but it's a little bit more in my voice, right? So I like that. So I literally I would just replace that, right? Connects you with, but I like the basic principle. They're right? I can go with that. If I wanted to add something here, in my mind, if I had a different thing, I would change it, right? Connects you with customers. I don't even need to change that. That's a good point, right? This one to me is not that big of a selling point. I think it's something worth noting, but I wouldn't that's not one I would go with. But let's start with this teaching one. Okay. So this gave us our 3 keys. Remember in the outline here, we were talking about the 3 keys or whatever. If you have your own keys, great. It's going to make your life a lot easier than just relying on Jarvis to give you 3 keys. But guess what? It might give you something you didn't anticipate. I didn't. This benefit of webinars wasn't in my mind anywhere. I would not have. I may eventually, but at the top here, that's not how I would sell it. But that is a good point. Maybe not a key point, but I think it's a really good point. So that's another good use of this. So let's keep this in this order. Teaching your audience. All right. So why is it important to teach your audience? Well, we talked about that a bit in our document here. Let me see. Hang on. I have 2 monitors, by the way. I have one on the desk here that I can look at other stuff, just in case you're wondering why I'm looking at my desk like a crazy person. I have. Where are you at? Okay, so I'm going to write my own sentence here, and then we're going to let Jarvis expand upon it. How's that sound? Loving this. Is there any way to make
maybe zoom in just a little bit? Some people are having some trouble reading.
How about that? Is that good, guys?
I
just zoomed in.
Better, yeah.
Oh, did it zoom in for you guys or not?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. All right. So, and this is where, Austin, I think people think Jarvis is going to give you everything you need. You may need to go out and do a little bit of research on these bullet points if you're not terribly informed, right? It's still important for you to freaking know stuff about. It helps a lot. Okay. So I know a lot about teaching. I'm not afraid to say that. And I know the benefits of teaching, and I know that it's the foundation of all persuasion. Okay. So knowing that, I can speak about that a bit, right? So I can write a sentence here and see what Jarvis extrapolates from it.
Yep.
So,
and at this point, to be a respected person on the webinar, so that you have the authority to teach on it, you sometimes need to share your bio about what you've done, right? And so what you could do here. So
we're missing
Power Editor. Yeah. Maybe you want to use the personal bio creator, and you could even because sometimes it's awkward for us to talk about ourselves, right? All of our accomplishments, and so you could click on that cursor in the top right and give it just some raw facts about your resume, and then it'll create a more compelling version of why you're a credible source. It'll use the adjectives that make you sound super good. And so next week we're going to be doing how to update your LinkedIn to sell yourself better. And so you could actually use that personal bio here as you're hey, I'm Sean Vosler, and I've written copy for Sam Ovens and Ty Lopez and have a book called 7-Figure Copywriter.
So I have a little bio here somewhere. I was just going to paste it in here and see what it does. I like my bio, but I haven't used this yet. Oop, that's long. It's one letter off. Come on. I'll take out my 3-year-old son. I'm just kidding. I'm sure I can. Here, watch this. His job. Message out. Here, bio. Sure, witty. Third person. Let's do first person since this is a webinar, right? Actually, I wrote it in third person, so let's see it in first person. So, let's generate that.
And click on the part of the document that you'll want to. Actually, it'll create below that. And I know you're on like maybe a tablet or something vertical. Is that what the screen size is?
Oh, you know what? I can just. Does that help?
Yeah,
that probably helps. I should have done that a while ago. I was just doing that so I could see the chat here. Wow. Presentation skills. I'm Sean Vosler. I help entrepreneurs become wildly successful entrepreneurs by leveraging the power of marketing message momentum. I help scale. Yeah, like that's good. I enjoy surfing with my son. Did I say anything about surfing?
San Diego. It's putting 2 and 2 together.
It really did. And while sipping on a nice cold beer.
We all need to pop the balloon just a little bit. You know, you inflate it and then you pop it.
I'm like, this thing is stalking me. Dude, this is great. All right. So I would just need to edit that a little bit. So check this out. So yeah, so in a webinar, obviously I feel like I'm breezing over some very important parts here, but we're giving them our this is our thesis, right? Webinars are a hot topic for like this is our thesis, right? This is our big claim. They're extremely efficient way to connect with your target audience and provide them with valuable information, product, service. That's our promise, right? I think it could be a sexier promise, but we'll start there, right? This is good. It presents the barrier, right? The problem is many people don't still understand how webinars work. That's pretty solid. So that's the problem. That's a part of the promise is the problem we're overcome. So is or we'll just say meet your presenter. So this is like a slide, right? So after our little thesis statement, we might have a nice little authority builder. I want the one about surfing. Yeah, here we go. So this is why it's important to read the output thoroughly. All right. So meet your presenter. Hi, I'm Sean Vosler. I've helped several 8-figure businesses scale. I've helped scale several 8-figure businesses along with designing dozens of 7-figure marketing campaigns for myself and clients. True. In my spare time, I enjoy hanging out with my son and corgi or reading a good book on the beach while sipping on an ice-cold beer. That's pretty darn good. I don't know if I would have necessarily written it like that, but I like it.
I like it too.
Adds a little bit of
man, so often I feel like people don't know about the personal life, but if you include like the corgi and surfing with your son and the ice cold beer, it makes you so much more human and relatable and approachable. But you've also done some pretty dope stuff.
And I dig that. That's cool. So let's go down our webinar. We're gonna jump, or we're gonna keep jamming on this a bit here and see this in action, because honestly, Austin, I didn't know about this compose element, which I guess is the coolest thing of this. I was just literally using the things on the left and like popping things in here, but this is sweet. All right, so I'm gonna say, since our first point, our key one, right, teaching your audience, the claim they make, which is true, it teaches your audiences the value of your product or service and helps them understand exactly how they can improve their lives or business, right? While also doing other things. Okay, So since I'm going to make a few more claims here, like we were talking about, very kind of basic language, right? Exactly.
What you're saying here is you're kind of like saying, hey, finish my sentences. So you start off and then it'll compose later.
The goal of any good marketing is to persuade your audience. I'm going to keep this real general, guys. The goal of any good marketing is persuade someone to take. Just follow me here for a second. To buy your product or service. Keyword being persuade. I did not spell that right. All right, so follow this train of thought. The keyword being persuade. So it's important that we learn the basics of persuasion. Right? This is the beauty of the computer. I can't spell anything, so that's
I'm the worst speller on earth, dude.
Right? If we want to create compelling webinars. One more thought here. I want to tie this into teaching. At the heart of any persuasive argument is a well-structured piece, structured. I don't want to say this. The heart of any persuasive argument. How about we just say this? Teaching is the heart of any quality teaching material is at the heart of any persuasive argument. Period. All right, that's all I'm going to put into it. So, yeah, Maurice, get in there and play with it. It's until you really like start experiencing it, like all the examples aren't going to help, my dude. The tool itself, I'll give you an example, Maurice, because that's a good point. Like here, let's go through and just show you a bunch of examples. If you don't know the tools inside and out, like what they do, which honestly they're pretty straightforward, you're not going to know how to use them together, right? So if you don't, I was talking to my audience about this the other day. If you want to build a table and you have a set of tools in front of you, you have a saw, you have a hammer, you have a drill, you have a level, right? Before you even get started with the first cut, you need to understand what each one of those tools does. We're going on the basic assumption here as we go through here that you're willing to put in the time to look at these tools yourself and get an idea of how they work. The first thing I did, by the way, when I got this software was literally, I didn't set out to like write anything specifically. I literally went into each one of these tools and messed around with it. I picked up the hammer and started hitting nails, right, to see what it was like, to get a feel for it. Because at the end of the day, that is how you're going to get the most out of a software like this, is getting to know the fundamentals so that you can put them together in really cool things like webinars and blog posts. But it's important that you get in and look at each element of this. So what we're doing right now is we are, to take a step back, we're writing some of this basic, really crappy copy and then letting Jarvis rewrite it based on the structure we talked out at the beginning of this webinar or this training here. So this bit of copy I'm highlighting here on the page, guys, is pretty terrible, okay? I'm not going to lie. This is bad copy. But all the key points are here. So let's try this. Let's see what Compose does here. I'm excited. So, Austin, let me make sure I'm understanding this right. Theoretically, if I hit compose here, it should be looking up the page a bit and pulling together some copy based on that weird paragraph I just wrote.
That's right. So it's looking at the patterns, it's reading the sentences, and it's also composing from what it's known as read 10% of the internet, which a lot of that is just public internet.
Jesus.
So it's compiling the training that we've given it, the internet knowledge, and then it's reading all of what you've said and creating and finishing the pattern. So if you're looking at, it might even start with key number 2 because it's reading part of that too. But we'll let's see how it goes here.
Cool. And then guys, what I'll do is I'll demonstrate exactly what I would do in terms of a webinar with this. Like I know it's hard because it's like conceptually webinars are they're kind of monsters in our mind. Like they're huge, complex machines, but all they are at the end of the day, we're just trying to persuade people of our claims. And then we're making a transition into our offer, which builds upon our claims and why they should take action, right? Does that make sense? And
some people have questions here about citations. So Jarvis creates original, unique content. And so it's pulling from all of its sources and then generating unique sentences. So it's not saying that this fact is from specifically this research article. It's looking at 100 research articles and then creating one unique sentence with it. So also fact check, because it's here to be creative. It's not here to be your citation tool.
Right. So I was talking about this in the group the other day. Literally what I do after I've written something with Jarvis is if there is a fact or a claim in the sentence, we'll do this as an example. This paragraph I wrote, which I'm not sure that we may need to go back into our power editor here, Austin, and I'll show you how I would take what I would do here just to make sure I'm specifically building on this point. Because this is going into kind of I think a whole different direction, and it's totally fine. So it's rebuilding, I think, based on all of this, not necessarily just this paragraph, which I was kind of thinking.
So you can use some of those, let's say you want to use a story here. You could go to the story tool and, put in, a little bit about, meet Jennifer, a mom, who's just now starting her first online business, and she's using webinars. What happened was the very first time she started her webinar, and then you give it that, it's going to run with the story and create this fictional, story tale. And it remembers characters. It's pretty interesting. Me and my friends mess around with that.
So real quick on the citation source stuff. If there's a claim, and so this I've learned from writing my book, any claim that is a unique idea that sounds like it's something that just, it's good to find a source for that claim. I try to find, so I have chapters written about the hero's journey. I don't claim that I came up with the hero's journey, and I give adequate, credit to Joseph Campbell and his book. And also the other books that I derived a lot of my concept from. Anytime you claim that you are presenting an insight, you should either you should give credit where credit's due. And it's really easy to find credit, right? Webinars are an excellent way to connect with customers. That is a claim. We don't necessarily need to give that who said it first, right? But guess what? That's a good bit of information for us to Google, find a supporting article or statistic, right? Like HubSpot, webinars are an excellent way to connect with customers. HubSpot recently published a study where they found that webinars converted 6 times better than VSLs. I just pulled that out of my butt. But if I Google this, webinars are an excellent way to connect with customers, I'm going to find some supporting evidence for that, right? So, guys, again, we're going to keep stepping back until this is super clear. But Jarvis, it's giving you foundational pieces to work from. If you make a claim in real life, right, unless you've already built authority for yourself to make that claim, you want to give that claim support with evidence, right? It's like if you're in front of a jury that hates webinars, you want to give them some evidence that webinars are a really good point, right? Or a good thing to use. So I'm going to step back here. This is fine. But that paragraph we wrote, Austin, and I like the idea of going back to the story. But I'm going to use a different tool over here called There's quite a few of them. I like to play around with the PAS framework is really cool. Like all these frameworks are really, really strong. Let's see what the content improver can do, because this says all the things I want to say about the introduction to this key point. If this was a tree, this is the introduction, right? This whole part here. These are the 3 branches, the 3 keys. I'm going into key 1, teaching your audience. I wrote this out. This is my set of claims about why teaching your audience is important, but it's like terribly written, right? So let's put it in here, the content we want to improve. Okay. Now this tone of voice is interesting here, Austin. What are some different things we can do here? Because I generally just do witty.
Yeah, well, this is funny because it is like, so we get the question so often, like, can you make a drop-down menu of all of the tone of voices? And it's like, you can go in our Notion docs, get like the, top 15, most commonly used ones, but the tone of voice can be, celebrities, it can be adjectives, it can be, like so many tones of voice. Like there's no specific set number of tone of voices out there.
That's the beauty of AI. I guess it can figure it out, right?
Yeah, like literally, like somebody used the tone of voice on an ad and made the tone of voice Dave Chappelle. And actually, no, there was another one that was like Joe Rogan, and it was so on point. But think about the amount of content Joe Rogan's created, and so Jarvis has read that.
Got it. Okay, so check this out. Andre in the chat just said use number sign before the last sentence you want Jarvis to stop. I think that's right. Is that right? Did I do that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it won't read past that hashtag.
So it'll start from the top and won't read past this, or it'll start here?
It'll read from where your cursor is up to the hashtags.
Got it.
It's kind of like that's like a little trick to get Jarvis to stop reading.
Got it. So I guess I can't do the compose thing again.
No, you have to now keep going down the court a little bit further. Give it some more direction.
We'll do this a little manually. I did Trump here. I just was curious. I think I confused it. Trump's voice is a perfect tone of voice to use for making a persuasive argument. This guy knows what he's doing. No. All right, let's not do that. Let's start a political debate right in here. That'll be great. I'm just going to do informative. Sounds like a tone of voice.
There's the app called Hemingway that like reads, what
like gives you
grade there is, like, is it, an 8th grade reading level or like a 4th grade? So some users were saying that it actually is working where you could put in like 5th grade reading level and it'll dumb down what your content is. Let's say that's like really factual and kind of jargony. You can get it to dumb it down to a 5th grade reading level.
Yeah, see, I don't like that concept. I say I don't know. I think it's fine to write a little smarter than you might think most people want to read. It just depends on if you're interesting enough to make good enough points to have people read it. But yeah, no, I mean, it's never good to like go overboard with trying to make yourself sound smart. Use authoritative or empathetic. Brett, that's really smart. That's really cool. I did informative. I don't know why. It just seemed to come to mind. Yeah, so this isn't quite what I'm looking for here. Oh, this is good. Yeah, no, this is freaking good. You're gonna don't sound so surprised, Sean. So check it out. So we'll take this. So I wrote, the goal of any good marketing is to persuade someone to buy a product or service, the keyword being persuade. So it's important we learn the basic persuasion if we want to create compelling webinars. Quality teaching materials is at the heart of any persuasive argument. Okay? So boring. Now, Jarvis built on that and said, the goal of any good marketing is to persuade someone to buy a product or service, the keyword being persuade. So it's important that we learn the basic persuasion if we want to create compelling webinars for our audience members who are willing to who will be paying attention in order to take away some valuable lessons from you when they need it most. That's pretty cool. I mean, I would simplify this a bit, maybe drop it in Hemingway, as Austin says. Whether through audio recordings through the phone or interactive, blah, blah, blah. So this one, this to me.
And then use your little make more creative button right there. So when you highlight text, you can, we actually put the content improver right there as a fast click.
Okay. So if I clicked that here, it would, see, I'm learning too. Content, does this make more creative? Is that content improver?
They do it like slightly different. So more creative will like expand it and let it like kind of go wider spectrum. Content improver is like rephrasing. See that the first one out of the three?
Got it.
Rephrase.
Oh, so that's okay. Cool. We'll try that on the next one here. Quality teaching materials is at the heart. It tried to be funny. It didn't work. The heart of effective persuasion. So I would, if I'm going in here and editing for a webinar, I might say what most people don't understand. Just say, I'll keep it 5th grade. Don't know is probably even not proper grammar, but let's see. This is why you don't edit in real time on a webinar, Austin. There's a common misconception about webinars that they need to be salesy to be effective. The truth is that quality teaching material is at the heart of, I'm going to say, an effective webinar. Guys, like, the beauty of this thing is the concept was this concept was generated through our one paragraph that we wrote about this, about our views on webinars. And then it extrapolated onto that to this whole train of thought, right? And then we're able to go in there and jazz it up. We could use Jarvis to do all of that. I just tend to do it myself, but it takes time and effort to build every syllabus. It takes time and effort, but every syllabus has been carefully. So yeah, this.
And of course, like, you're going to have to add in like your own flavor. You know, you have a tone of voice. That's the Sean Vosler tone of voice. Right. And your audience is going to expect some level of familiarity there. But what this is helping you do is not have to start from a blank page. And you're moving faster than ever. And it's often creating new directions that, you know, you might not have thought of. Especially, I love the marketing angles tool on the left, because that one will generate some really unique positioning statements.
Dude, this is still so cool.
So yeah, like if you start doing like bullet points, like it'll recognize that pattern and keep doing bullet points as well.
And it looks like it understood that I was doing a headline here, right?
Yeah.
Or like a subtitle. So I put these little hashtags for it as was recommended. Michael says, I'm getting good results finding existing blog posts and having that's a good idea.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of supporting tools on your left-hand side that help you compose a blog post. So you can start off with like marketing angles, find which angle of the blog post that you want to do, and then you'll go in and put that into the outline of the blog post, and it'll create like, you know, your 8 headers, like 7 best ways to lose weight on the keto diet or something like that. And then you put each one of those into the blog post intro paragraph. So all of these work together, you know, in the direction that we're going as far as like the way that the app looks is like we're moving towards workflows. And this is a good part of that. But what we need to find out is like, what are the common order that people use these? So
right.
Think of like the a la carte on the left. Well, eventually it'll be like a 12-course meal.
So check this out. Let me switch my screen real quick. And you know, to put a finer point on the webinar element here, webinars, VSLs, blog posts, they all are, in my opinion, the end goal is the same, to persuade someone to take action. So they all have they need similar structure. The only difference really is the length and the depth of the information. A blog post doesn't need to be 10,000 words, where a webinar might need to be, right? Because you're asking somebody to buy a $2,000 product, not to, you know, teach them. Well, the call to action in a blog post, it might be to a product, but it might just be to make a change, you know? So to me, the structure is always the same. I did that structure. I popped in there. You know what? I'll give you guys 2. I'm going to pop this in here as well, Austin, into the chat. And then I want to show you an email I wrote with this, and this might give everyone some clarity, because you're right.
Well, you think about it, like, dude, what's the difference between a taco, a burrito, a chalupa, a quesadilla? Like, they're all like tortilla, meat, cheese, lettuce, sour cream, pico de gallo. You know, and
just different amounts.
Maybe the presentation's a little bit different, you know, like, but they really have a lot of the same ingredients. And so that's what you look at, the ingredients on your left-hand side. And then the way that you present it is how you're compiling this document here on the right-hand side. You know, so yeah, we're doing a webinar and a VSL in this training, but the philosophy for a YouTube video script is similar, or for the outline of a blog post. That's the beauty here of really just how marketing works. But, you know, Jarvis is your fast track to it.
Dude, so check this out. And I just shared in the chat an outline that's in my book that's very similar to the one we talked about, but more conceptual. It's called the contrarian copy structure. More? What's that?
Could you zoom in just a little bit more? I want to see.
This is an email that I wrote with Jarvis. I just want to show you guys how I did it. The thing I just shared, let me switch I'll just talk about this for a second, not to confuse people even more on what we're talking about here, but this is a page from my book. This is the outline I use for every freaking webinar, everything, right? But it's a printable. It's not like step 1, have a headline. Okay. These are, if you accomplish these 7 things in a paragraph or a 60,000 word book, the structure is going to stay the same, right? But we don't have time to go into every single one of these. But if you, I'm telling you, hit every single one of these elements, you will make a very compelling piece of copy. All right, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Don't worry too much about that. I will show you. So this is an email that Jarvis wrote for me. Obviously, I went and edited it. But yeah, so here's are the different tools I used. Austin, so you can hear. Is it actually, am not freaking sharing my screen. I got it. Hang on. Let me know when you guys can see this.
All right, now we can.
Okay. So I obviously promote this software because I use it. So I wrote an email about Jarvis, and this is mostly written in my voice. Like I just, this is it, right? But I said from this below, it's all AI generated. So I use the creative story tool to write this introduction part here. So this is not a bad way to start an email, right? Let me tell you a story of an entrepreneur named Sean, no relation. Sean was tired of trying to figure out how to write persuasive marketing content from scratch. He always seemed to be overwhelmed with all the different ways to write, and he'd often find himself procrastinating and avoiding what he knew needed to be done. Okay, so this story here, if you guys haven't played around with this yet, this creative story tool here.
Well, we can't see that other tab, but yeah, the creative story.
You're right.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting that.
Great.
Yeah, so that's a good way to open, but it's just a different creative way to frame. I'll show you guys what I put in there real quick. And sorry about the tab issue here.
All good.
And I can share this email too if you guys want to see it, but yeah, so I wrote this like beginning, middle, end story, right? Here's Sean. He's tired trying to figure out how to write persuasive marketing copy from scratch. Found an amazing tool called Conversion AI, gave him the power of artificial intelligence. Not a very compelling story, right? But what was outputted from that was actually pretty freaking good. Again, I sound surprised, but I shouldn't be. This tool is ridiculous. Okay. But you could do this in a webinar. You could open with a story. Then I use the PAS tool. I use the BAB tool. And you see, I didn't just like use them one after another. Again, back to our like building a table analogy. You might need to go put part of it together with a saw, and then take a sanding tool to it to finish it, right? So I intermix a lot of these different tools, and I don't think there's always going to be a right and wrong way to do it. I think you can get creative with it, and that's part of the fun, right?
PAS is problem, agitate, solution. And that's a really great framework for telling a story. So if you mix those two together, it's like a recipe for great storytelling that leads somebody from where they are to where they want to be through the perspective of somebody else.
100%. So I'll pop this email over to you guys so you can see it in the chat. I'm assuming you've already.
As we wrap up here the next 6 minutes, what do you want to end on how to make a webinar persuasive, take action, all of that, and also post in the comments any questions that you have for Sean. We'll go into Q&A as well. But yeah, what here makes a webinar have a strong ending, especially with the script with Jarvis?
Well, okay, guys, I want to step back because I know we've been kind of getting nitty gritty. We're going from a tool to concepts and kind of bouncing around here. But I'll take it a step back, and that's a good question, Austin, because the thing I'd like to get across to people is that, as I said, webinars are just a persuasion tool. And if you are using Jarvis as a tool to help you build your argument, which I think it's a brilliant tool to do so, then you still need to learn the elements of creating a persuasive argument first, right? And that, to me, this outline is a good place to start. The one I shared, I'll share it again right now just in case you guys need the link. But if you have that, if you already have the recipe to make, or you already have the blueprint to build a table, you've got the tools, your job then is to follow the blueprint and use the tools and make it a compelling argument. Then at the end, right, I want to share this. This is the problem with trying to do 6 things at once. Here we go.
And if you're watching the recording in the Academy, it's going to be on your right-hand side. I'll put it
Cool.
there and
Yeah, that
reference
outline.
Handouts.
Yeah. So a lot of people go about it backwards is what I'm trying to get to. They look at Jarvis as the end all be all to write a compelling webinar, yet they don't know the elements of a compelling webinar. And I'm just saying, strip that word webinar out of there. And what is it? It's a compelling argument. So what do we do then? We go back and we say, all right, how do you make a compelling argument? Right. So going up that hierarchy of information and learning those things, if you want to write great copy, if you want to create great content, you got to learn those fundamentals. And they're really not that complex. Like, how do you convince your child to do something, right? Sometimes that might be a bad example because they're very illogical. But how do you get your friend to stop drinking? Okay, something a little more dark here. We'll go for a second just to bring the point home, right? You wouldn't sit down necessarily with a drink with them. Maybe you would. I don't know. But let's say you want to do somewhat of an intervention, and that's a lot of times that's how I view these webinars. I'm trying to do an intervention with somebody who's screwing up their life or their business by not doing something that I want to convince them to do, right? So how do you do that? Well, you sit down, you don't berate them. You don't say, you're a bad person. You've been drinking and ruining your family, right? That's not very persuasive. And if that's your approach to persuasion, you need to take a step back, revisit the old school argument techniques, right? A really good book, by the way, for this is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's probably the best book on how to write a webinar out there. But what do? You sit down and you explain to them the basics of the situation, right? Like, you're a great person, you have a great business, in context of the drinking, we'll just keep on that analogy. You're a good person, you've accomplished so much, but you're running into a problem, and I can see it, and everyone around you cares about you, can see this, right? You have a misconception about you drinking that you don't think it's affecting you, but it is. Here's a compelling reason why. You feel terrible in the mornings. So you lay out the evidence, right? You don't berate them. You just, here's the facts. And the emotional appeal, everyone talks about using emotion in selling. Emotion comes naturally if you're making a good argument. Okay, if you tell somebody that they're logically,
you don't need heavy buzzwords all the time.
Yeah, you don't need to tell them that they're ruining their lives if they drink too much. You just need to tell them the facts, that they're not spending time with their family. It's like all these things. I'm not trying to have an intervention here that's getting a little dark, but the concept is there. And then how do you drive it home, right? I care about you. Empathetic language, right? The conclusion to make an offer in a webinar, empathetic. Brett made a really good point of using that tool called empathetic, or the tone of voice empathetic. You want to be empathetic at the end. Listen, you're trying to write copy, yet you're not a copywriter. Why not pick up a tool that can save you all the freaking headache of trying to learn this stuff from scratch? Get to know the basics of it. Of course, you're going to have to know how to use the tool, but guess what? You're not going to have to spend hours trying to learn the proper grammar, the proper structure. You're going to be able to use this tool to save you so much time, right? So at the end, you're using empathetic language to present your offer, and then you're just building on that, like building the case for getting it, right? So think about this, guys. If you were to go out and hire a copywriter, a good one, to write your content, it's going to at least cost you a minimum X amount of dollars. No doubt. Even if it's just a part-time position, it could, a decent one, maybe 1-2 pieces of content a month, it's going to cost you about $1,000 a month. No doubt, in my mind, if you want to get a decent one. Now, if you pick up Jarvis, you plug it into your systems, you learn a bit about it, maybe even put it, hand it off to your assistant to use it. But the beauty of this tool is that it has built-in marketing frameworks that you don't need to learn. You can just leverage them. So it automatically turns that person into a qualified writer, right? So anyways, we're making that argument here, right? Yeah. But that's what you're doing at the end. You're building that value. This is not just
for people who don't want to learn copywriting, but you are like the copywriting guy. Like, you've written the book on it. This is your profession. So how does it work with you where, like, some copywriters like scared that it's going to replace them? Right now, it's your assistant. It's like you've elevated from, maybe the grunt work of just like the raw copy to now you're a director, or as I guess they would say in the job title, like chief editor?
So a big thing I do spend a decent amount of money on is that first phase of copy. I'll do it for myself, but it takes so much time. There's several phases of copy. The very first one is fact finding and argument building, in my experience. Right, when you're writing a webinar, it takes me about 40 hours to write from scratch a webinar, no doubt. Like plus another 40 of procrastination that I don't want to work on it. About 30 hours of that is just getting the freaking information together, going out, doing the research. So if I can cut that by a 10th by having a tool that I just plug in some of my thoughts and then it pulls out solid information through the vastness of the internet out there, then guess what I'm going to go do? I'm going to take some of those keywords. I'm going to go do some research on them, find supporting arguments. I'm still going to do some work, right? Like, it's not linking me to, and maybe in the future you guys will have it where it links to sources and references as well, which would be killer. But I'll just go out to Google Scholar and I'll pop in a line like we had earlier as an example. The webinars are a great way to sell, like, or something very generic like that. I could go find an article by Neil Patel or someone to support that statement. It's working backwards. Generally, you go find that supporting evidence first. But I'm telling you, it's such a time saver. The emails I've written with it already, it's saved me a ton of time of just coming up with the basic argument pieces, right? Then I'll just go back and rewrite it. It's fine. But yeah, it's not going to replace copywriters in the sense. It might replace the Upwork or Fiverr copywriters, but they're not really copywriters. They're just, word jockeys. But I'll tell you, Austin, the main argument in my book, in my sales page, I'm not a copywriter. I'm an entrepreneur who does copywriting. And I think copywriting is a very fundamental skill that every entrepreneur should have, not because they need to write copy, but because copy is what drives product development. Okay. I firmly believe this. When you guys were working on this product, I'm sure you started writing the sales page for it and wrote a bullet point that, you know what, Jarvis can't do this yet, but it really should because I wrote this bullet point. It would be great if it could do that, right? So I do a lot of my product development backwards. I'll write a sales page for it, and that sales page will tell me what needs to be in the product. Yeah. So I'll just leave it on that. But I seriously,
a book as well, right? Like you start with the table of contents. If you actually go back to last week's training with Darby Rollins on how to publish your book in 7 days with Jarvis, the most important part is day one, where you write out, you give yourself 1 hour or whatever the time block has to be to just map out the milestones of where they are and where they want to go, escape Hell Island and arrive at Heaven Island. And those key moments on the path are what lead them to their new life. And that's what the chapters in a book are. It's also, in a shorter way, in a webinar, those 3 takeaways that you just mentioned. It's like these are the 3 big steps to go from a mom without a webinar and an automated business to a mom with one.
Exactly. Someone is asking where to get the freaking book. I should probably have an easy link to that here. I'll link it in there. You guys can check it out.
I mean, pull the whole audience and say, like, what is just one thing that you took away from today's webinar? One sentence about it here in the chat, and I'll talk a lot of them out loud, give Sean a little praise here, but also for all those people that skip to the very end of this recording and want to just, a 2-minute quick learning. What would you say you took away from this past training?
Austin, I'll tell you what I'll do too. I'm going to download this video and edit it so that it actually makes sense in a logical order. That's another beautiful thing Jarvis does better than I will ever be able to do, is put things in a logical order. Like the blog post outline tool, I use that even if I'm just trying to have a conversation with somebody. I'm like, I can't get things in my head in the right order a lot of times. So that's 90% of my editing.
For For sure, yeah.
End with
Order of
empathy.
operations is key.
Yeah.
So, people are saying that ending with empathy, or like leading with empathy, is also really important, and it's actually a tone of voice that you can put there inside of Jarvis. Let's see. We also have that the outline is incredibly important. Sean, what do you think is
focusing on finding the right SOP? I think that's Roy has a good one there. Because the first thing I did, I literally wrote out an SOP on how to write a content post because I didn't know how to do it with Jarvis when I first bought it. So I was like, well, I'm going to write my own recipe, and it'll change over time, right? And I posted in the group. People seem to like it, but
SOP, by the way, is a standard operating procedure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, anytime you want to learn a skill or use a new tool to improve on a skill, keep it I keep an ads journal where I write down my Facebook ads, like results and my because you'll forget them, right? So writing out SOPs should just be a natural approach to life, in my opinion. I'm not always good at it, but the majority of my book actually was born out of SOPs that I had with my clients because I can't remember how I do stuff, so I have to write it down.
Yeah, for sure. We use SOPs all the time. I'm even actually about to start following my SOP as soon as this webinar ends. It goes to my SOP of editing, uploading, and promoting the replay.
That's probably a good idea. I should have one of those.
Well, guys, thank you so much for attending with us live. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and hop into the long form editor now and get started on building your own VSL or webinar script. And if you have questions, of course, you can comment in the Facebook group. And if you tag me or Sean, we'll probably respond if Sean's not out with his corgi and kid on the beach surfing. With a cold brew.
And drinking beer, evidently. Yeah, I'll just say too, Austin, real quick. Thanks for having me on. I know you guys always bring excellent value to your audience. This is such a new frontier. I think a lot of people are intimidated by it. Something I'm going to re-say it one more time. Learning the underlying elements that drive what we're trying to do at this top level with a tool like Jarvis is another part of the process. It's not as straightforward as, say, learning how to paste things into a form or whatever, but learning the fundamentals of what makes a good argument, learning how to tell a good story, learning how what persuades and what pushes people away. Learning a lot of those fundamentals are super valuable things to spend some time on. Not all that complex, but they will help a lot of the in the process of creating this marketing. But you guys have done such a fabulous job of putting these tools in a compelling, logical way that I think anybody can just hop in and start experimenting and create some killer stuff, even if they're going back in and adding their own tone. I'm such a believer in it. It's a cornerstone now of my business as well. I promote it a lot because I think it solves that fundamental headache of where do I start? Because after you've answered that, it actually becomes fun to write. I enjoy writing after that painful of starting point. So there's an ad.
Yeah, have fun with it, y'all. We're on a new frontier. It's 2021 and things are just getting started. I love the way that the community is using Jarvis, and they've really taken it their own and found so many fun ways to use it. There's this one dad in the group that does story time with Jarvis and his child. At night, they will write a story together, father and son, using AI. And they have a little journal that they're compiling every night's lullaby story. And that's so interesting.
Well, that's weird, but I love it. I am totally going to do that. And I love that, dude. That's so cool.
Sometimes because the app is mobile friendly, sometimes my friends and I will literally just bring it up on our phone at the local beer garden and go through and make some fun stories.
You're getting pickup lines from Jarvis, aren't you? That's what you're doing.
I'm going to plead the fifth here. there's I love just saying like, where will the night go? I'll be like, Austin and Sean just into the webinar, and Sean's flight is here to Austin next. So when he lands, they meet up at Lazarus Brewing. And then what happens next is, and then I let Jarvis fill in the rest of the story. And it's just so fun. Like, me and my friends are like letting Jarvis plan out our night. Like the craziness that's about to happen.
That is a YouTube channel waiting to happen that will promote this better than any kind of marketing that we're going to make. So,
well, did you see what Darby Rollins, he recently wrote a book, 180 ridiculous business ideas written by Jarvis. And what he did is that ridiculous marketing ideas one and said, pitch me a business like Shark Tank style. And then he just gave it the business name. It could be like Floaty Boat. And then it's like, Jarvis, pitch me a ridiculous business called Floaty Boat. And it came up with like the one-page ridiculous business. And he did 180 times and then published it on Amazon.
Jeez. Dude, I love this creative stuff, man. I'm going to have to get back in there a bit more and play around because writing emails is boring now after I hear these ideas. Jeez. It's only saved me like several hundred hours, but I still haven't like made a game out of it. So that's my next step.
Exactly, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for spending some time with me and the crowd here. And we will see you all in the Facebook group.
All right. Talk soon, guys. Appreciate you.